Welcome into the Dad Verb Podcast. Topics around parenting from the lens of a dad.
Hey everybody, welcome into the next episode of the Dad Verb Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about finances. We're going to be talking all about the money, right? Kids are expensive, life is expensive. It seems like no matter what your paycheck is, it never quite goes far enough. So we're going to maybe talk about some of the regular expenses that you might know about, some ways maybe to save a little bit, some ways that we are setting up our families financially for our futures. Because, you know, as dads, our job is to provide and protect, right? And that means safety, physically, mentally, financially. We're doing what we can. Now, say this to
I like the fact that you just assume I'm not a sugar baby over here. Like,
I know, right? Yeah, I don't think any of us are nepo babies. I don't think any of us have big trust funds or anything. We all live in pretty moderate homes, I'm gonna guess. I've only ever seen one room in anybody's house, but we're all just regular dads trying to make things work, trying to make paychecks work, and figure out how we can pay for everything that comes along with our kids. If you have forgotten since the last episode, my name is Ben. I'm one of the hosts here on the Dad Verb Podcast. We've also got Muamer and Andrew Saunders. How are you doing tonight, fellas?
Hello.
Good. Don't forget the hockey puck futures. That's where I've got all my capital.
The hockey wall.
Hockey puck futures. All right.
It's all invested. The girls are going to be rich.
They're going to be rich. Pieces of old tire.
Awesome. So, hey, before we get started and before we get into our sick check, I do want to send a special shout out to the one, the only, the man who will be missed, Gordon Lightfoot, without whom none of us would know the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So if you hear some Edmund Fitzgerald references in this episode, just know they're going to come from me, because I'm very sad about this. It's really kind of messed up the last couple weeks.
See, and I thought he was going to say two. Like, I thought he was going to be like Andrew Tiu, who's no
we
longer
do miss
alive.
you. We do miss you.
I was waiting for that moment. I'd be like, man, Ben, that was a little like heavy. By the way, he's our number one fan. Apparently, he sent us all a message to let us know. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. So before we get started with our episode, as always, we're going to do a sick check. Now, I think for the last 1 or 2 episodes, we have gone back to 0 where somebody has been sick in our household. So I'll kick it off. Everybody is happy and healthy in our house so far. Although I will preface it with, I think there's a cough. I hear it. There's a bit of a raspy cough that's starting.
You got 1 week to figure that out.
I know it's been going for like a week or so. So hopefully it doesn't develop anymore.
And vitamin C now.
Yeah, I know. We are prayers up. We have a vacation coming up that we don't all end up sick before that happens. But so far, everybody is, fingers crossed, healthy. Muamer, how about you?
We are through the thick of it. I know last week we broke the streak. So little man is now in the clear and healthy, and everyone is riding on green. So we're going to keep trying to do that.
Awesome.
Yep.
Saunders?
Ditto. Yeah, we're good. We got sniffles are gone. Coughs are gone. We're riding on easy street for now. I mean, we said that, and now next week we're all SOL. But
all right, so we'll chalk that up as a win. All right, we'll put a 1 up on the board and say that everybody
back to 1.
That we're back to 1. Back 1 day without a workplace accident.
I swear, I'm gonna get a little chalkboard back there. It's just gonna have this 1, and people are gonna be like, "Why?"
I don't know if you guys seen. This reminds me of the trend where it's like number of hi, I'm Muamer, and this is day 1 of me not upsetting my wife. This is day 2 of me not upsetting my, and then nope, this is day 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. All right, gentlemen, let's talk finances. Let's talk money. Now, we are all, I'm going to assume, I think we're all kind of squarely middle class, upper middle class gentlemen, right? We all, I believe, own homes. We all may or may not have some investments. And like all parents out there, we are always thinking about the future of our kids, right? I think none of us are under the impression that we're going to be here forever. We're all kind of in our 30s and 40s. We're all squarely in or very close to what we'd call midlife. And you start to look at things a little bit differently. You start to look at how long is my money going to stretch when I don't want to work anymore, which quite frankly, every day feels a little closer to just I don't
I
want
don't
to do
want
this
to
anymore.
work anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start. So I know I have kids that were in daycare. This is a big expense for a lot of families, and I think a lot of people get sticker shock when they first start looking at daycares, realizing just how expensive childcare is here in the U.S. So, Muamer, I think you had kids in daycare. Saunders, I don't think you did, right? Your kids were not
No.
daycare kids.
I got grandma care.
Yeah, we
Right.
actually didn't either. My wife worked full time when we had our first,
Mhm.
and it was more cost effective for us to, and like outside of us wanting to and it being a personal decision, but
Yeah.
it still made more financial sense for her to stay home. She went back to
Yes.
work after a while, but yeah, even now it's like we have a babysitter come every so often, but we heavily rely on the grandma daycare system.
Yeah. Yeah. So to key you guys in, we have two kids. Both have been in daycare since they were 8 months old, maybe a little bit older than that, maybe closer to a year. But our daycare bill, which is we researched it, it's pretty average across most of the country. Our daycare bill is $1,300 per child per month. So
That's
at its peak,
insane.
so at its peak, we were paying about $2,600 a month to have our kids in full-time daycare. Now that's come down a little bit now that our son is in kindergarten. So we are saving a little bit there, but I'm convinced that once we're out of daycare, that I'm just going to buy a boat because I might as well.
I mean,
I might as well.
Ben, if you don't mind, when your kids are out of daycare, I could use that for a mortgage payment.
Yeah, I'll just pay off somebody else's mortgage.
Just send them out. Yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate that.
There's a stat I pulled for this. Childcare has risen over 200% since the 90s. Childcare costs.
Yeah.
It's
actually ours has gone up. I need to correct that number because our daycare I think is actually closer to $1,600 a month now.
Wow.
Because it's gone up every year. And this is the thing you'll find. It's just like college tuition. Every year, your cost of childcare is going to continue to go up, usually by $100 to $150 per month. There are typically fees that go along with that too. Like there's a registration fee that we have to pay every year to re-register our kids in the same daycare that they've been going to since they were a couple months old.
in case they forget who they were.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's usually like $150 to $200. So bit of advice for the dads out there. Number one, if you haven't started looking at daycares yet and you know you're going to be a dad, start looking now. Wait lists are typically a year or more in a lot of different daycares. So you may be on a wait list for other kids to get out, but it is going to be expensive. So for you guys with your sort of alternative arrangement, right? So Muamer, I know you said it made financial sense for your wife to stay home, which I completely understand. What was that decision like?
Yeah, it was tough. I think even before the financial aspect of it, we had to decide like, is this even something that we wanted to consider? And part of it was like us being like, we want to be able to find the best balance for us of how to, because at this point I worked from home still. She worked in an office, and we're like, hey, like if we do this, we're not really going to see each other. It's all going to be passing and fleeting moments.
Right.
So we're like, we just need to try to find a way to make it work. And so we had to really sit down and say, if we did daycare, what would that cost and how much would that be? What does either her paycheck or my paycheck work? And like which one would make the most sense to lose? And how do we get open to it? Because I am very open to the fact of being a stay-at-home dad. I tell her all the time, like, I would be great. I say that in theory. I know it's a lot harder and I'm not like, but I'm making a joke. But seriously, so we looked at all aspects. But then we just had to say, like, all right, if we did this, could we still make it make sense from a financial perspective and budgeting perspective of what we needed to pay for the mortgage, and this is something we'll get into later, what we thought it would cost to pay for everything our kid needs. And then everything else, like, groceries, utilities, etc. So we were like, you know what, even if we have to cut back on things, even if we have to, make sacrifices elsewhere, this is what we would rather do. Because just the cost of childcare and even just and I think Ben can speak to this, like the logistics of it, of
Mhm.
going and dropping off and registering and picking up and maybe being
Right.
sent home for,
Yep.
sickness or behavior, like whatever it is. There was so much that went to it. So like we had to decide like what do we fundamentally want to do, and then really sit down and say like how can we make the numbers make sense.
Yeah. What about you, Saunders? So when you guys made the decision to have your kids stay at home, grandma
Yeah.
daycare, what went into that decision?
So we really didn't have a choice. I mean, I live in small town Iowa, right? So
Mhm.
3,000 people in the town. There is one daycare / preschool. And though I have been on the wait list since I moved here 2 years ago, and I have
Wow.
yet to get a call to say, hey, there's an
Wow.
opening. So like there's either something going on where my name just isn't coming to the top, or like siblings are getting in, or I don't know what's going on. But um the first time we got offered daycare services was when my 3-year-old went to preschool. They're like, she can come to daycare after preschool or on the days opposite, right? And for us, it's the 3 daycares that are within 20 minutes of my house. The rest are almost a half an hour to an hour away. Are all somewhere between $4 and $5 an hour per child, based on age and diapers. Per day. So when we did the math, it was going to be effectively a car payment for us every month just to have our kids in. No, every week. What was that? Anyway, the numbers were too much, right? Like it wasn't feasible. So then the question was, does somebody stay home? Does somebody not work? Can we afford to be a single family, single income household? Right. And the long and the short of it is, when we were in Salt Lake looking at this, my mother made the generous offer that if we moved to Iowa, she would provide daycare services. Now, 12 months in, I think she regrets that statement, but I'm holding her to it because I moved to Iowa. So that being said, we do actually kick in some money from our paychecks, and we set her up with like a little deposit account so that she has spending money for the kids and activities and things like that. It's not as much as like daycare services around us, but it frankly made more financial sense for my family living in Utah to move to Iowa, buy a different house, and leverage the proximity to immediate family in raising our children than it did to try and find daycare services because I was looking at the same thing. I was looking at Ben's $1,300 a month a kid, and it basically meant that my wife or I was working just to put our kids in daycare.
Yeah.
And we kind of went, that doesn't seem right.
I just want to pause on how absolutely insane that is. That
Yeah,
it was
that's
cheaper for you
so
to
dumb.
uproot your entire life, move to another state, sell your house, buy a different house, to just not pay for childcare, to not have that expense of childcare hanging over your head, which I will say, in the 4 years or so that we've been doing it, it is a huge financial burden, right? It is something that is constantly hanging over your head because it does limit the ways that you can save for other things, the investments that you can make, into whether it's your retirement or a 529 for their college, or even just savings for them for when they get a little bit older. It's a big challenge.
Heck, I was going to have to pick between HSA and daycare, right? Like, do I want to pay for medical expenses, or do I want to pay for daycare? Like,
I mean, at the baseline of that $3,600 a month for 2 kids at 48 months, that's $173,000.
Right.
That's insane.
It's wild. Yeah, when you start to really break it down and think about how much you're spending to have your kids taken care of. And the fact is too, is like, daycare workers aren't paid super well. It's typically a relatively low wage job. And still, we're all contributing this massive amount of money just to have our kids taken care of.
Yeah, and for us, it was the financial aspect of it. I can't remember what the quotes that we had gotten around here were, but it's to what Saunders had said, like, one of us would be working to pay for daycare, and I'm like, that doesn't sound fun for anybody. Like, why would I want to do this? Like, yes, parenting is hard. Yes, being a stay-at-home parent is even harder, but to pay to work or pay to have daycare and just work for, I guess, free doesn't sound like a good gig. And so when you're breaking it down
Well,
at that aspect of it, like even if you're spending half of that to pay for lunches or utilities or meals for whoever's helping, because I realize also like not everyone has a like a nuclear family system around,
Mhm.
but even if you're just looking at the cost of like a salary or even what you would pay to send snacks and to send supplies to a daycare, like all of these um, what's the word I'm looking for? All of these or indirect costs as well, you have to
Mhm.
kind of factor outside of just the actual cost of daycare.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and that's the thing you have to look into in daycares too, is there are a few that we looked at that were just as expensive that didn't actually provide food.
Yeah.
You had to
Yeah.
actually send all of your own food. So snacks, lunch, everything would have to be packed and sent every single day. And there was no option to buy lunch or anything like that. So I would say I think that's kind of the number one expense for kids outside of like healthcare. And let's jump into that too. So I know, healthcare is expensive in the US, right? We do not have a single payer system. We have
Oof.
private insurance. We can get, we won't get into the politics of that or anything like that. It's a much longer discussion. But when it comes to saving for health expenses, how do you guys manage that? Like what does that look like for your families?
There's
I do
a
my. Oh, sorry.
Go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Saunders. No, I was gonna
Say
say that I just heard there's a somebody said it earlier. It made me laugh. Like spray and pray. Like yeah, that's how it feels. It's just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Even starting out, right? Like the cost of
Mhm.
having a kid. If your kid spends time in the NICU, like
Mhm.
all of those fees are just I had sticker shock right off the
Astronomical.
bat. Yeah, I think so. We spent 6 weeks in the NICU. Our first kid spent 2 weeks there. So on top of my wife giving birth in Nashville, which is already expensive, and the
Mhm.
Vanderbilt hospital being super expensive, like spending 2 weeks there for her and then for the baby and all the doctors, and because you get an individual line item for everybody that comes to visit you. By
Yep.
the end of it, it was like $2 million. Thankfully, we had like health insurance, and what I didn't realize also at this point, once it gets over a certain amount, the government gets involved to like bond out the hospital in
Yeah.
case somebody can't pay. So I'm like, why is this so much? So already at the beginning, we were like, all right, we are ill prepared for how much it's going to cost to have a child and to prepare for healthcare. And that
Mhm.
changed our entire mindset going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the big things we realized too, is even looking through like so we had, a good healthcare plan. Not fantastic. Everybody kind of complains about their insurance plan, but we had a really good insurance plan through my job. So my entire family, my wife and both my kids were on that. But even then, over the last few years, those deductibles, the out of pocket maximum has gone up, right? So one of the things that we did is most companies will have an HSA option where you can contribute pre-tax money into an account. So it just pulls directly out of your paycheck. You never see it. It can only be used for health expenses. We max that out at, I think it's like $8,500 per family right now. I think it may have gone up recently, but it's relatively high. But our out of pocket maximum for our insurance, I'll give you a guess. What do you think it was?
the
Six
last time you had
thousand.
a kid or this year?
So so just in general for everybody. So this was like
It's
our
12.
family's out of pocket.
Yeah, families are like 12 grand, give or take.
Yeah.
12 to
Yeah.
16.
So ours
Yeah.
ours just recently went up, but it was $10,500 that we would have to pay out of pocket before everything would be 100% covered. Fortunately or unfortunately, we did actually hit that maximum, I think, a year or two ago. And so my vasectomy was free because I ended up being able to go in. And it's funny too, because the medical providers know it, because when I went into the urologist, there was literally a sign outside that said it's vasectomy season, because it was the end of the year.
Oh,
So they know that all the dads have
It's like tax
paid.
season.
Yeah, it's like all the dads have paid so much in healthcare that they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want any more kids. I'm going to go get a vasectomy. And so everybody comes in for their vasectomies like right around that holiday time when they know they're going to have a couple of weeks off.
right.
But that was kind of where we landed. I mean, a typical primary care visit for us for, we had an ear infection in my daughter. A typical primary care visit before that out of pocket was like $300 to $400. And so without that HSA savings that was just coming out without us seeing it, I mean, we would be sunk in just basic medical care for, coughs, colds, ear infections, which my son had 6 or 8 within like a 6-month period when he was little. And so did my daughter. She ended up needing tubes, and that was like a $5,000 surgery. So it is just, you start to realize, because you're not the one, like, I don't use a lot of medical care, so I don't really think about medical bills. I'm very fortunate to have been healthy and not needed a lot of care or surgery or anything like that. But going through and just seeing it stack up of visit after visit, and especially once you get out of the hospital and you have to go, the week after, and then you have your 1-month checkup, 2-month, just 6-month checkups, and on and on and on, until you're looking at the bills and going, oh my God, like how does this cost this much?
Wow. I must just ended up being lucky. I mean, I don't know how else. No, seriously, like, I'm trying to think of my most recent appointment was 100% covered my insurance. It was just a standard office visit, like mine.
Mm-hmm.
I think otherwise they're like $150, $200 at the most for an office visit, like when I'm paying for labs and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I know for
labs.
Both of our kids' births, I don't think I spent more than $3,000 or $4,000. But I can tell you the one thing that really, like, we actually ended up net positive on our first kid, because
sold the privacy rights or something. Yeah. Like, what happened?
No. So what we did, we went out and got short-term disability insurance about a year before we were going to have our kid. And they all have like these 10-month clause, like you have to be paying your premiums for 10 months before you're allowed to withdraw for a pregnancy. But it turned out that between my work short-term disability, my wife's short-term disability that covered her, it covered the entire bill for the hospital. And we had like $200 or $300 left over because we had a $3,000 hospital indemnity. She spent a night, and right, like, there's all these nickel and dimes. And so that's the one thing that I've used a couple of times in this process is, if you have free short-term disability from your work, if you go to the emergency room, fill it out. They give you $50, right? If you spend a night in the hospital, fill it out. You get $900 or something. Like, they're in there and it's available to you. And we all see the commercials for Aflac, but that's actually what it is. It's usually Aflac or MetLife or something like that. And so for the first one, we were basically 0 or positive. The second one, I want to say I just used my HSA account, because I've been pretty good at, like, what's my out-of-pocket maximum? Okay, the HSA needs to have this at the end of the year. This year I'm not going to, for the next kiddo, I am not going to get that lucky, because my HSA account is not that full and my out-of-pocket maximum got bumped.
And I think it's good though that, like, you guys have like had the HSA and the foresight on some of these things. For me, what I end up realizing is, like, even from a financial perspective, like outside of medical, but I feel like at the end of every year, I'm like, what the hell did I spend all my money on? Where did it go? And then I start looking at things like insurance. So we're re-upping for our plan for next year. I broke down the costs. On premiums alone, I've spent $7,590 this year for the family.
Wow.
Okay.
So is that health insurance, auto, home, like all of it, or is that just?
No, that's health insurance.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the actual out-of-pocket cost so far that I've met, my family out-of-pocket deductible is $9,000. So it's a little bit low, because we went with the higher, and this was our original thought. I was like, let me get the best plan, because I had to have an elbow surgery and like all these things. I was like, let's go ahead and just get the best plan this year. We'll pay like as much as it costs for the monthly, in hopes that the bills that we get on the back end won't be as bad. They were still just as bad, because we have now spent on top of that $7,500, another $4,549 in out-of-pocket costs for like the co-insurance aspect of it before we've even met the 100% coverage. So all in this year, we're at $12,140. And this is where, like, as a dad, when you start looking at these things at the end of the year, you're just like, dang, like what? How?
thousand
Like how did
it's
this happen?
$1,000 a month in
Right.
insurance.
It's
How do
insane.
I earn this well and feel like I don't have anything left
And
in the bank at the end of the month?
well, and the part about that you're not even considering, that doesn't include any over-the-counter meds. It doesn't include prescriptions. It doesn't include like just your any random trip to Walgreens, right? That's not in there.
Yeah.
And like that's
Yeah.
where
So it's just nuts that we like, again, I don't feel like we had a ton of medical visits. I mean, we clearly went some and used it, but even just a plan alone where it's like, let's go like for the baller plan, the gold plan, and
Mhm.
get the best of the best, still didn't get us like the savings that we thought it would. And then now I'm stuck like, okay, how do we think for next year? What do we do? And this is where like the financial aspect comes in. Like we're going to try doing an HSA. We're going to try to max it
Mhm.
out because it's like, hey, we're already spending 12 grand a year. Like might as well have it try to appreciate and into savings. And but it's these kind of things that you don't realize having kids that as a dad, like when all these things start adding up, you're just like, man, this is just astronomical.
and
Yeah.
you got to think 18 months in advance on almost all of it, because you got to think through like, okay, it's open enrollment now, but that plan doesn't start until January or July or right,
Yep.
whatever the quarter is
Right.
following open
Yeah.
enrollment. And then you're like, and they recycle it at that point. So I'm not going to get like my restart date.
Start over. You start
Yeah.
over from
Yeah.
zero, basically.
And
like
if you're-
out of
Yeah.
pocket.
Right. And if you're double insured like we are, where my wife has a, so like I'm probably going to end up getting screwed this February because my insurance will be mid-cycle, which means we'll be close to the deductible, but her insurance will have just rebooted in January, which
Mhm.
means she's going to have to pay all of it, and they're going to try
Yeah.
and bill it twice and counter up, and it's like, man, this is just not going to
Honestly,
work.
my advice would be for like those situations where you have to figure it out. What I've done and what I did for this is where the beauty of AI comes into play, right? Like your insurance company isn't going to tell you like what's going to be the best for you. Like they will help you and they will give you like the claim stuff, but they're not going to tell you like financially what makes the most sense.
Mhm.
I went in, downloaded like because you'll get all the claim summary and like the spend summary for most of your insurances. I downloaded all my spend, put it into Chat GPT and said, here's how much I spent this year. Here's what the new plans are for next year for like bronze, silver, and gold.
Right.
And did scenario modeling with Chat GPT. I'm like, based off what happened, assume similar instances, what makes the most sense? And like, because these are things like where I think before I would have had to like really sit down and like do the numbers and crunch everything. And then now it's like I have something I can at least make it a little bit easier on myself to
Yep.
have like the financial
Mhm.
conversations between me and my wife of if we do X, Y, or Z, what would be that scenario and then what makes the most sense. But that's what I would say is like a good example of like, you know, if I go with the HSA model and fully utilize it, what's my total spend compared to now? What's the benefits? And it makes it an easier conversation because finances as a dad is just overwhelming, and it's overwhelming for families in general. And so when you can use tools like this that exist now, as comfortable as you are sharing your data, right? Like
Mhm.
it helps. It at least helps get over the hurdle of like just figuring out this mess of documentation and paperwork and pricing
Right.
to say like what could work for me.
Yeah.
Well, and-
Congratulations, you had a kid, and now you need to be in insurance and finance.
Yeah, yeah, you got to know the ins and outs. You got to read the fine print. Like,
Well, and
Yeah.
the other thing that we haven't even gotten to the fact that like you basically have to re-shop your auto insurance every year. You have to re-shop homeowners insurance every year because they adjust those rates so often that you can't just rely on like, oh, Progressive gave me a good rate last year, and then all of a sudden you're like, why are they 3 times more expensive than any quote I'm getting for auto insurance? And it's absolutely amazing to me how much they fluctuate. Like I just redid our auto insurance and I cut it by half. Nothing changed. We're accident free, we're claim free. I saw a commercial and I was like, all right, I'll just fill this out. What have I got to lose,
What
right?
could it hurt?
Yeah, I'm just going to get a bunch of junk email, and I set up the iCloud hide my email thing, and that's the email address it used, so I could shut it off when I was tired of getting them. No, the first 3 I did were all significantly less than what I was currently paying for the same coverage, and it's like, I guess I got to do this once a year now, right? And
so I think that's a good segue, and I know this is typically Ben's part, so I'm sorry, Ben.
No,
But
you're
I
good.
feel like we've talked a lot about spending, right? Like how
Right.
expensive everything is and how we have to think about that. But I guess on that same front, like a different mindset, saving. Like, yes, we got to figure out how much to like spend, but how do you even think about like budgeting and saving, and not even just for daily expenses, for long-term planning of college, or for if you're doing that, or for anything else that you might want to do, like vacations, etc. Like, how do you guys balance that?
I mean, I automated it so I don't have to think about it. As bad as that sounds, so my dad tried to do kind of the like college account for myself and my sister and other things, and this was before the 529 really existed. And what ended up happening was really weird. Is it's really hard to turn over a brokerage account that's co-owned by a minor once they turn 18, because then they're actually the owner, and you can't like undo that legal mess from a tax purpose standpoint. And so I learned that lesson, because I figured, like, how do I save for weddings? How do I save for college? How do I save for, and I said, forget it. I'm not going to do that. It's an investment portfolio. It's in my name. And I put in $100 a month per kid. And then I got one that does fractional investing, because that's important. And I set up automatic transactions. So the money goes in on payday, and on payday, it buys fractional shares of mutual funds that I've chosen, equating the amount that's deposited, and it goes in. Right. And then you get cost. What do they call it? This is not financial advice. They give you they do cost. Ben, what do they call it when you average the highs and lows over a long period of time with purchasing? I know you.
I don't remember.
Dollar cost averaging.
Yeah.
You dollar cost average your purchases, right? So like, just because the market keeps going up, my average cost per share is going up slightly. But when it does have a bad day and I happen to buy on that day, it averages out, right? So
you're not buying at the highs constantly. Like, you're buying at whatever the average is over a given period, rather than buying at the high because it happens to be high on that particular payday or whatnot.
Right.
So I mean, that's really interesting, like the whole automation aspect of it, right? Like, just the set it and forget it. I think that's, we've touched a little bit on like 529s. I know that's something I'm not super familiar with. I've read about them. I don't know how I feel about it. I think, the way we look at our investments is, obviously, like, my wife and I are investing for our retirement. We have life insurance and whatnot. And so one of the things that we did, I think we talked about this on a previous episode, was we wanted to not only invest, but have a way to protect those financial investments, right? So, God forbid something happens to us, we wanted to make sure that our investments were distributed or taken care of in a way that while we're coherent and with it, and not making decisions, based on, somebody's in the hospital and we're not in the right frame of mind or whatever, that we can direct those things. So one of the big things that we did was we went to a lawyer and we set up a family trust. So we built a trust, and in that trust, there's a will that says, who gets custody of our kids, and kind of, gives you a breakdown of like, okay, who's in first position, second position, but it also breaks down like all of your financials. So anything that you have invested, anything that is like an appreciating asset, like your house, any investment accounts, anything like that. Basically, what would happen for us, and this is the way we thought it would work the best, is my wife and I are the trustees, right? If something happens to one of us, all assets go to the other trustee. If something happens to both of us, all of our assets go into the trust. And then that trust is taken care of by the designated trustee, which in our case is my mom. She's in first position, right? So our kids would not have access to any of that to direct any of the money or move anything around until I think they're 27, I think is the age that we set. So it's a relatively, they're not going to be, 20 years old and getting access to all of this money all of a sudden flooding into them. I cannot imagine being 17, 18 years old and all of a sudden I've got, $500,000 or $1 million sitting that I can just access. but it also protects them from, and we went through this with my wife's mother when she passed, right? All of her assets had to go into probate. You had to go through
Yep.
courts, and we are actually, we're 4 or 5 years in now, and we're just now settling that estate. To the point where like the paperwork is done, the county has signed off on everything. We're just
Right.
getting to that point. So
But that,
if you're thinking about
let's be
taking care of
fair.
your kids for the long term, like that's a great, it's a great way to do it, to know that your wishes legally have to be adhered to. We even went so far as to put our house in the trust. Like our house is no longer owned by us as individuals, it's owned by our family trust. So if something happens, the house becomes an asset that goes into the trust, and any sale proceeds from the house will go into the trust to fund it. Any real estate that we invest in, same thing, it will all go into that trust. So it just gives us a lot of protection for the future for us and for the kids. And then they don't have to go through that whole process of probate and lawyers and all this other junk to get themselves set up for the future.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it does take a lot of work. My in-laws just went through the same thing of doing a trust for the exact same reason, right? Like we had to deal with it when my wife's grandma had passed away, and like watching my in-laws go through, like it's a nightmare. And so having that up definitely keeps it of peace of mind for you, knowing what is going to happen. And then the hard part comes in like knowing what you want to do and what you want to put in the trust, but then also what you want to save for outside of that. We talked about the 529 plans, and I think that's a personal preference. Again, this is no financial advice. Me and my wife actually both, we had to pay for our own college. So it's like I have a similar mindset and mentality of, if you want to go, great. You should. I think you should. And if you want to do trades, great, go do that. But you should pay for what you decide to do. No free rides. Like get a scholarship, either athletic, academic, whatever it is. But like that's on you. So for us, it's really about like how do we save for the lifestyle and our retirement and the things that we want to do with our kids between like the ages of now and when they decide to go off to college or when they grow up. And then how do we kind of make sure that we're set in the future too? So like we want them to be comfortable. We want to build some kind of legacy for them to have, in the event that something does happen to either one of us. But it's not about like we are going to pay for everything for you, because I think it's also a fundamental, like you having as a dad and as a parent, just what your preferences, right? And so that's kind of where for us, it's like that's where we've decided on how to invest and what to invest in based off what our ultimate goals are at the end.
Yeah. And those are the conversations you need to have, right? Like, and it needs to happen sooner than later. So if there's anything I would encourage anybody listening to this to do, if you haven't sat down to just think through your financials and what you want your future to look like, because I will say, one of the biggest things around, Muamer, you mentioned like retirement savings, right? I don't want my kids to have to take care of me. I want to be financially independent to the point where they're not worried about me. I've got food on the table. I'm able to, completely take care of myself no matter what the situation is, because ultimately that's not only protecting me, that's protecting my children's financial future too, because I don't want to be a financial burden on them should something happen to me. So, I mean, that's kind of the biggest piece to take away, right? Like kids are expensive now, right? Like doctors are expensive, healthcare is expensive, daycare is expensive, but ultimately all of this is to protect them. It's to do our job, right? As protectors, as providers, both, financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that.
I think one of the pieces where we haven't addressed is you can start extremely small on these things, right? Like you can start with $5 a week, because you're not, like, the thing of it is you're not taking it out in 12 months, right? You need to like there's a couple of great YouTube guys who talk about the compound interest rules and calculations and how you can really get away with like $5 a week into an account that earns 4 or 5%. And if you do that for 20 years, at the end of it, you've got 6 figures worth of interest piled up. And hey, frankly, if you never take it out and you just let it go, you've got that nest egg, that first down payment on a house, that wedding, dream wedding, that intro college tuition, right? And let's all be honest, that's a Starbucks cup once a week, right? That's a pack of cigarettes once a week. I know it's terrible analogy, but we all waste $5 somewhere.
And there it is. It took a
week.
while to get Saunders to do one for we were due for something. Yep.
But that's my point is, if you can grab a $5 bill and get it into an investment portfolio, into a mutual fund once a week, and just not touch it and let it sit, for something like the last 60 years, the market has averaged 10% growth. You just have to get it in there and not touch it, and you will succeed, right? You can't go play like I'm going to be the GameStop millionaire investment game. You have to be patient.
This is all,
and you have to pick a long game strategy mutual fund. And there are lots of people who give you great advice, but it's a slow, patient burn game. And start small, and you'll be amazed how quickly it piles up.
Yeah, and listen, we know that there is especially like given the macroeconomic environment right now and inflation and just rising costs of everything, like there's a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes it feels like that's what most of us are doing. So we realize that the conversation around savings and planning are tough, especially in situations and environments like this. But all I will say is, like, everyone's situation is unique and different. Please don't take what we're saying as like, the end all be all. We all have different opinions. We all have different perspectives. Find the best situation for you. And like, it's tough out there for everyone right now. I shouldn't say everyone. There's some people who are on the other side that are like, this is fine. For most people, it's tough right now. Yeah. And so I would just say, like, keep doing what you're doing, keep grinding, and keep finding the best balance. And even if you're just thinking about these things, I think is the right way to approach it. And just know that, like, hey, at some point, it's something we should do. It's a conversation we should have. I think that's even a great first step.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end it, gentlemen. Good conversation about finances. Everybody start small. Do what you can. Do what works best for your family. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Dad Verb Podcast, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.